Good morning, everyone. Creating exciting and sustainable places where people want to live, work and socialise is the central challenge for the property industry. But what does it mean for London's development market? How do we create neighbourhoods which are dynamic, socially inclusive and environmentally resilient? And can we do it in a way that also helps address the shortfall of supply relative to demand? These are the questions Nick, Johnny and I will set out to answer over the next few minutes. But first, like all good research presentations, let's start with the numbers. To meet housing demand in London, every year for the next decade, we need to build 52,000 homes. That's more than 500,000 homes in the next 10 years. Last year, we built 37,000. And with a decline in start volumes, falling permissions, and fewer applications in recent years, we know future delivery will remain well short of that target. It's a similar story in the office market. Here I'm referring to the very best offices, brand new and refurbished Grade A stock. Despite an expected recovery in 2022, this remains in short supply. Our analysis of the development pipeline has identified 14.5 million square foot of new or refurbished office space which will be delivered within the next 5 years. But with long-term average take-up of new stock standing at 5.2 million square foot per year, there is a potential shortfall in excess of 6 million square foot by 2025. Clearly, there are opportunities for you to accelerate delivery to meet expected demand across both sectors. As Nick and Johnny will discuss, the challenge is to do so in a sustainable way, and to do so in a way that meets the changing nature of demand. But what do we mean by that? Well, one legacy from the pandemic has been confirmation that the best places are not segregated commercial or residential districts. The best places are those that provide a dynamic mix of living, working and leisure activities. Our research reinforces this view, highlighting the growing importance of amenity, of community and of walkability within the residential market. It's a trend equally important to office occupiers looking to draw on the deepest pools of talent. This should lead to an even greater focus on creating mixed use, mixed income, walkable places. It's not just about demand, there are practical advantages. As well as making better use of land, there is evidence that connecting people with goods, services, community and infrastructure has a positive impact on capital values and generates long-term social and community value. That is our vision of how London could evolve. But equally important are the questions of how this vision will manifest itself and where the next opportunities will come from. For those, I'll hand over to Nick and Johnny.
In recent years, London has diversified away from developments dominated by a single use. Battersea Power Station, Elephant Park, Canary Wharf. All have adapted their offer through the evolution of their original planning position, a proactive and necessary step for these vibrant neighbourhoods. And looking forward, we have Earls Court, Euston Station, the South Bank, Canada Water. These major new hubs for London are targeting a full breadth of occupier, worker and visitor through exciting new planning permissions focused on mixed use. But if the data tells us that we have a consistent issue with undersupply across London, why do we care about mixed use? Which, at least on paper, is reducing supply by diluting those planning applications across a range of uses. And how can the case for mixed use be so compelling that highly valued planning consents are being revisited? Firstly, consumer demographics. Simply put, the consumer has changed. We now want to both live and work in versatile, dynamic locations, offering more than just live or work. Secondly, flexibility. Flexibility on delivery strategy, flexibility on funding, flexibility on timing. Mixed use can accelerate delivery through partnerships whilst reducing our exposure to market risk for any given sector. And thirdly, viability and planning. Particularly for residential, as the hardening planning position of the Mayor has left us in no doubt that the drive for affordable housing and affordable workspace are key drivers of land value. As such, any global slowdown in demand, such as we have seen through COVID and Brexit, significantly impacts viability to such a degree that change is necessary.
So, what does good look like? To answer that, we must look to the newest districts for inspiration. Places such as Nine Elms, Stratford, White City and King's Cross have provided a campus-style release valve, attracting expansive sectors like big tech and life sciences. The likes of Facebook and pharmaceutical giant Merck are both great examples of this. These areas have successfully provided a vibrant, cohesive mix of lifestyle, living, education and workspace. This enables some of the world's largest companies to attract and retain the best talent possible whilst remaining connected to London. The demand for this style of development from occupiers has driven compelling and sustained rental growth in these areas and created a ripple effect for the buildings in the immediate vicinity. All submarkets in London will need to adapt to survive. Looking to the future, the next opportunities will lie in schemes and in areas that start evolving into a balanced, resilient and sustainable mix of real estate whilst reacting to market changes. There's a huge shortfall in the future supply of office space over the coming years, so these are questions we need to address sooner rather than later, especially after 5 quarters of increasing take-up, seeing occupier activity rebound to above the long-term average. Crucially, these trends and changes are also further moving apart the traditional perception of what makes a core location. As Nick mentioned, Canada Water, the South Bank, Earls Court and Euston are just a handful of areas to watch.
And alongside all of this, a desire for sustainability will drive mixed-use development as the need to repurpose begins to impact. We at Knight Frank are convinced that repurposing has a crucial role to play in the future of development, but we still have a distance to travel in terms of that practical execution. Future life cycles must be planned for today, providing an understanding of how buildings will convert or be repurposed in the future. And yes, changing sustainability credentials pose challenges, but it's up to us to adapt, find the long-term solutions, and deliver a quality of environment appropriate for London's future. While compliance will evolve over time, the fundamentals of delivering sustainable assets are by now well understood.
The exciting news is that the office development world has seen a huge response to the ESG and climate change call to arms. Developers have led the charge, driven by taking responsibility, and large-scale occupiers have been very public about their own carbon commitments. Recognising real estate can be a vehicle for change has been one of the shining lights over the last 2 years. With added weight from capital markets, policy and public perception, ESG has rightfully risen to the top of the agenda. The life cycle of rebuild or repurpose through intelligent design must be embraced. If mixed-use urban developments of scale are to help relieve the supply crunch and create a more sustainable and lasting built environment, they must be future-proofed and able to react not just to market changes, but also to global changes.
Close to 400 million people will move into the region's cities by 2030, and over half of the world's megacities will be in the Asia-Pacific. Mixed-use development, which physically integrates residential, commercial, cultural, and transportation functions into a self-sustaining neighbourhood, encapsulates the idea of a 15-minute city. It is a key concept to foster sustainable urbanization. If you take a look at some of the region's iconic landmarks, Tokyo's Roppongi Hills, Sydney's Barangaroo South, and Marina Bay Financial Centre in Singapore, what stands out as a common thread is that they are all mixed-use developments. The adoption and thoughtful execution of the mixed-use development is a massive opportunity to leverage on the region's urbanization trends. As investors continue to incorporate sustainability criteria into the investment process, commitments to net zero targets will gain momentum. Development and redevelopment will have to adhere to the decarbonization protocol, not just due to pressures from investors, but also to access the growing green financing market. According to Active Capital's 2021's Sustainability-Led Cities Index, the region's highest scoring green cities are Shanghai, Beijing, Seoul, Tokyo, and Shenzhen. While the region has continued making strides towards the greening of its cities, it still lacks the sustainability standards that global cities such as New York, London, and Paris are setting. However, there are clear reasons to believe that this gap will continue to close.
The growth in e-commerce and home deliveries is prompting increasing demand for urban logistics and needs to be a key element in how we plan for urban centres in the future. There is a need to use space more efficiently, and policymakers and developers are pursuing policies of intensification and co-location. As city centres look to encourage more electrified and non-motorised vehicles, this brings opportunities for more mixed-use and multimodal urban warehouse developments. For example, in Paris, the redevelopment of the Gobelin rail station will include a mix of office space, logistics space and public realm. The development will house an underground logistics centre and will feature charging infrastructure for electric vehicles. Environmental performance is becoming an increasingly important aspect for developers of logistics stock. Investors are increasingly partnering with developers to access their land banks. Assets are not being traded on and are therefore being designed and built with a longer-term view. Green buildings with sustainable design features that also take into account evolving technologies such as electric vehicle charging and generating clean energy help to future-proof an asset, thus protecting an investor's exit values as well as reducing the risk of voids, obsolescence or the need for extensive refurbishment and capital expenditure in the future. As a result, we're seeing more BREEAM Very Good and Excellent rated logistics developments.